Well, good afternoon, you wonderful lot. If you could just let me know if everything looks okay, sounds okay, and we're all rolling, we'll start things off. And then we'll go through and say a couple of welcomes to everybody who's joined in today. And obviously, if you are new around here and you enjoy the live streams, give it a thumbs up. And also, if you are new around here and you've got a question you want to ask me during the live stream, just do #Q for question. Makes my life a little easier then when I want to take a look through for any of the posts that you're kind of asking a question. Just makes life a little easier. Okay, so if you could, like I say, if you could let me know if everything looks and sounds okay, that would be much appreciated. I know we're about 30 seconds behind on the live stream to what I'm actually saying, so I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a delay. Oh, we got a thumbs down already. Well, that's great. Thank you very much. So hopefully we're all looking okay. I'm assuming we are. Excellent. Thanks very much. Cheers, Max. Thanks, Nicholas. And thank you, Dave. So today we're going to do the usual kind of live stream. We're going to have a chat. We're going to answer some questions. I've got a couple of little things that have sort of popped up over the last few days that I think are interesting and worth taking a look at. And generally, we'll just hang out for about an hour and just talk about WordPress, web design, all those kinds of cool things. And before I go any further, just to answer Ground Pet's question about the van that I have, the camper van thingy, let me see if I can pull the picture up. There we go. That's my converted camper van. So, no, it wasn't Mark Harris. No, it wasn't. It was Grown Pets. But that's the camper van, fully kitted out inside. Yeah, bit of fun. It was a little bit of fun. I decided I wanted to buy something last year for the festivals and things like that, and this was the right thing that I wanted. Which is pretty cool. Anyway, that's it. Just want to say, thanks very much, Mark. Always a pleasure to see you around here. Oh, it's so nice to hover over that little band button, I tell you. Just to hover over it, just ready to say goodbye, Mark. Anyway, who do we have in today? Let's do a couple of welcomes and thank you very much for joining in. And if you are new around here, this is your first time on here, you can do #new just to let us know. And if you've been around here for a while, #old. Although, if I'm honest, I probably know most of the original crew, the OG, so take that for what it's worth. Dove Bear, good to see you in. Max, always a pleasure for you to join in. Ground Pets, thank you for joining in. Destination Montana, thank you for joining in. Nicholas, good to see you. Greg from Dublin, welcome. Phil, always a pleasure to see you in. Jordan Sutherland from South Africa, MDN, a pleasure. Mark Harris, we got to put up with some things, haven't we? John, always a pleasure to see you in as well. Thank you very much for joining in today. Mark, a pleasure. And as I said last time I was on the live stream, which I can't even remember when that was because they all just blew into one, check out Mark's channel. He's doing some great work. Did a video, a live stream with Kevin Geary last week, which is worth checking out. So if you want to find out a little bit more about Mark and his transition from Elementor over to Bricks Builder, go and check out that video on Kevin's channel and check out Mark's channel as well. He does some great things. Show your support for that WordPress community and all those wonderful people taking time out of the day to create content for sharing around for all of us to enjoy. Anyway, thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining in. Who else do we have in? Dave, always a pleasure to see you in as well. Mel, thank you for joining in from New Jersey. Edward, thank you from Bucharest as well. Apart, thank you for joining in. Who else do we have in? Els, always a pleasure to have you in here. Yanis, good to see you in as well. Who else? Let's just check. Rich, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining in. Feroz, thank you for joining in. Stephen, and a couple of new faces in here. Thank you for joining in, taking the time out of your day to join into the live stream. Like I say, if you are new around here, if this is your first time, the whole concept is basically we have a chat. We just talk about WordPress, web design. If you've got questions for me, #Q for question, and then we can kind of go from there. Ronald, good to see you back in as well. It was a pleasure to see you around here. Okay, cool. So, a couple of things that I wanted to sort of bring up in the stream. Let me just get my screen up so I can talk about the right thing. First of all, which is kind of in keeping to what we talked about, I think, in the last live stream, was security. Now, security, as we know, is a very big thing when it comes to WordPress with those 50,000+ plugins that we've got available to us. God knows how many thousand themes and all those kinds of things. Well, the Solid WP have just released their vulnerability report for March 20th, which is today, and there are an awful lot on this list. 183 patched plugins and 16 that are unpatched. So I would recommend 150% that you check out this. I'll put a link to this. Let me just grab the link for this so I can share it with everybody. I can just post this into the comment section. Come on, copy for me. There we go. So check this out and make sure that you check out that list, because it's a very, very long list. And if you have anything there, please do go and update it. There are a lot of Elementor-based plugins inside here. So things like Elements Kits, Essential Add-ons for Elementor. There's Gutenberg blocks by Cadence Blocks, Post SMTP, Elementor add-ons, Elements, Advanced Access Manager. As you can see, there's a massive list. So go and check that out, and please do make sure that you are up to date with everything that you have installed on any of yours or your clients' sites. It's massively important to make sure you are up to date, and always take a backup first. Because in the eventuality that something goes wrong, and at some point it will go wrong, at least you'll be able to get back up and running quickly. If it's an important site, like an e-commerce site that has lots of changes happening very quickly, orders going through and things like that, and you can't put that into maintenance mode, please make sure that you do it on a staging site. Take a backup as well to make sure that you can test everything out and then roll things out once you're happy that everything is fully working. That's vitally important. Okay, so like I say, the link is there in the chat, so please do go and check that out if you're not a solid WP member and you get this sent out. You don't have to be a paying member. You can get this sent out to you every single week, I think it is, and it'll list you all the vulnerabilities, and then you can go and make sure you have everything up to date. Which kind of leads me on to another point with something like this. If you are running multiple sites, please do make sure that you're using something like main WP, which means that you can have all of your sites in one location. You can be updated when there's security things you need to do, and you can roll out those updates and run backups and all those kinds of things very, very quickly, so it doesn't take huge amounts of time to handle these kinds of things. There's lots of different ways. You can check out my channel's got, I think, at least one video on main WP on there, which once the final version 5 is released, I'll probably go back and take a little look at that as well. I'll probably do a refresher video on there. And maybe if enough people are interested, let me know in the chat. If dealing with things like this where you have to handle and manage multiple different sites, whether you find something like this would be useful, another video on tools that you can use to streamline this whole process. Let me know. If you haven't checked out the video I released recently, and also the live stream, which covers lots of things to do with security and firewalls and all those kinds of things, go and check those out, because I think they are massively important now, probably more so than ever with the issue that we had recently with Bricks, with Quickly, with Elementor, with lots of different plugins out there. And as you can see, over 183 plugins here. It's worth making sure you've got things in place if the worst happens, and ultimately when the worst happens, just so you know. Okay, Andrew, thanks for joining in. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, thank you very much. Okay, so I've seen a couple of questions on here, so let me just do a quick search for hashtag Q. Ooh, apart. Right, let's just pull this up. I'm using WP Bakery Editor, where I have created all custom templates using ACF Builder display on the page. Now I want to build custom pages in the editor only. How can I do that? Not a clue. If I'm honest, I have stopped using WP Bakery. And if I'm mistaken, does WP Bakery even manage dynamic data? It didn't when I used it last time. But I'm not a WP Bakery user. I haven't touched that in probably 5 years. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be the best person to ask how to handle something like that. I do apologize. Oh, come on, Dave. You've got to bring it down this early in the live stream. When will you finally embrace full site editing? When they make it usable? I am going to do a video. I like the Ollie theme. I like what Mike McAllister's done with that. I really do like that theme. But less to do with the full site editing side of things, and more to do with the what do they call them? The templates, basically, the templates that he's got included in that. I think they're very, very well done. And I like the look of that. But full site editing, I think I've talked about this plenty of times and voiced my opinion on it. I just don't think it's very good. I can see what they're doing. I can see what they're trying to do. But this whole trying to make WordPress the same for everybody, to make it an easy platform to... I can't think of the word I'm looking for. It's one of those days where I can't speak properly. I just think they're going about it the wrong way. I think they're making a lot of things far more complicated. I think because they consistently don't have that consistency of design between, the sort of full site editing, Gutenberg and the standard WordPress, and I'm sure it will all come together at some point, but this has been in the same state now for multiple years. And I think they're just making things that should be easier more difficult. I know Jamie loves full-site editing, and I pretty much watch every video he releases to see at some point, do I start to get a little bit sort of, that looks interesting. I will say the video that Jamie released, I think it was either the end of last week or the beginning of this week, on CSS grid inside Gutenberg, excuse me, that did look interesting. That did kind of pique my interest. The implementation, it looked okay. So that probably is something I will go and take a look at. But I'm conscious of the fact that because Jamie is definitely the one that covers, sort of full-site editing, Gutenberg, and we just call it core WordPress. I don't want to step on his toes where he's making a lot of great content. So for me, I would have to kind of have several stars align at the same time to make it something that I would be interested in really embracing. I still think we just need tools like Generate Blocks or Cadence Blocks or Greenshift or something like that to sit on top of WordPress, on top of Gutenberg, on top of core, to make it truly usable. And I think this is the biggest problem we've got. We're still going to stick with legacy themes until the functionality that we need comes to full-site editing. And up until now, we've had to rely upon Quickly, which sadly has now called it quits. We're going to have Greenshift, and there are probably several other ones that are working with core, but I just don't think it's there. I don't think it's anywhere near there. I think the biggest problem you've got is that WordPress is kind of losing its identity. It doesn't really know what it's trying to be. It's trying to cater to everybody, and I think it's really catering to nobody. If you're a blogger and you just want something really simple and straightforward, sure. If you want to get in and dig in deeper, which kind of then negates the whole point of making WordPress easy, well, you're kind of still in that same position where it's not really what people want. And I think this is one of the problems is I don't think they actually asked the user base of WordPress, what do you actually want? Because it just feels like it's designed by committee and nobody really is heading things up and pushing it and steering it in the right direction. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why Gutenberg looks different to sort of full-site editing, which looks different to WordPress. I don't get it. But it will happen at some point, I'm sure, Dave. But right now, no, it just isn't there for me. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I can use another builder with WP Bakeries. I can't remove it as my site's too big. That's my point. Unfortunately, I'm not a WP Bakery user. I honestly have no idea what level of dynamic content integration you actually have with it these days. Because like I say, the last time I used it, it didn't have any. It was anything like that was included in Visual Composer. So I would recommend probably joining up some of the WP Bakery Facebook groups or, sort of Discords or Reddit groups. And I'm sure there's people there that can answer you with a lot more authority than I probably could with this, because I just don't use it. So I'd be answering from 5 years sort of last time I used it. Am I planning on any tutorial creating an AI-powered chatbot for WordPress sites? Not at this point in time, no, because I don't really have any use for chatbots. And I think creating an AI-powered chatbot, I don't really see the point in that because they're already being done. There's already companies out there that have created this and probably do a better job than most of us would do trying to implement that into something else. However, I am always keeping my eye on AI tools. I use AI tools in my everyday work. When I create videos, I use AI tools to transcribe things, to create the descriptions for the videos, to create the foundations for tutorials, to do lots of different things. So AI is something that I definitely keep an eye on. But chatbots, I think that's probably best left to the companies that specialize in chatbots and they want to integrate AI into this. And then they've got a better understanding of how the whole principle and the requirements of their user base would have over someone like myself trying to figure out how to do it myself. Atif, anything in 6.5 you're looking forward to? Is anything actually making it into 6.5? Is the typography and font management actually making it into 6.5? If it is, that would be useful. But like I said, because I don't really use core WordPress without something like generate blocks or something like that on top of it, most of these changes don't really have much of an impact on me. You know, I just have no massive interest in it. I think we can do so much more with tools like Bricks Builder, you know, those kinds of things. I just don't see the need for me to kind of go and dig into that. It's too much of a limitation, too much of a limiting factor to be doing anything other than following what WordPress is actually doing, just to keep an eye and keep up to date with what they're saying they're going to bring to things. But as we know, that's been pushed at least once, so God knows if that will actually make it into this final release. We'll have to wait and see at some point. Anyway, so that's the security side of things. That's answering a couple of questions. Now, a post that popped up on Dynamic WordPress earlier this week, and I know Mark shared this with our little sort of private group kind of thing. If you are let me just get our teeth off the screen. There we go. We've made the stream look nicer already. If you're looking for a pretty useful site, I mean, Specky Boy has been going for God knows how long. But this little site has, as you can see down the table of contents on the right-hand side, if you're new to working with a lot of CSS tools like the Grid Builder and so on, you can use these nice little sort of visual ways of working. They're individual sites and things that have these free tools on them. So if you want to sort of work out with CSS Grid Builder and you want to use a generator, or you want to work with something like animation tools, there's a ton of them on here. And I'm going to go through and take a look at some of the best ones and maybe pull those out and put them into a little video of the best sort of free CSS tools and online tools that you can get to kind of just do lots of different things. Like I say, if you want to check the quality of the CSS, you've got CSS quality checkers on here. You want web accessibility, if I could say that. You've got checklists on here. So we can easily go and take a look at one of those. And there's your accessibility checklist. And you can see you can go through all these different things, get information about it, see the links through to any information you want to make sure that everything is, you're following those kind of rules and so on. All pretty cool. And there's, like I say, there's 100 of those cool things on here. CSS snippet collections. You can never have too many CSS snippets. You can see you've got FabPick, you've got Snippet Shot, Ray.so, Generate Colors, Screen things. There's tons of stuff on here. So let me just grab that link from there for you as well. I'll just copy that. I'm going to paste that into the comments. So I would highly recommend going to take a look at that, because I think there's a lot of really useful little mini apps and things on there that could be quite useful in your everyday use. I mean, one of the nice things we like to sort of do is we like to think we do everything ourselves, but I think anything that can make our lives a little easier, whether we're creating our own websites for ourselves or we're creating ones for clients, these are the kind of little tools you want to bookmark these. And when you want something done quickly, you could just run through I use this for things like gradients and things like that. I just think they're really useful. They're just really handy. Okay, totally different question. Video Boy. Any recommendations of affordable AI captioning and transcribing tool? Not so much the captioning side of things, but if you want one that uses AI to transcribe videos, and these can be your own videos or other people's videos, and then you can run them through AI to do other things, then I would 100% recommend Mac Whisper if you're a Mac user. If not, I have no idea because I'm a Mac user. Let me just pull this up. Now, I've been using Mac Whisper thanks to David McCann from the Dynamic WordPress group, because he's the one that actually showed me this and put it to my attention. And this is a fantastic little tool that simply allows you to drag and drop your videos. Simply drag and drop them onto that screen you can see there, or open them however you want. You can even create new recordings inside here as well. And then you can run it through and it'll transcribe it, and then you can save it out as various different formats. As you can see, text files, SRT files, so you've got your captions if you're using something like YouTube and things like that. Or you can use WebVTT, output them as docs, PDFs, all those kinds of cool things. And it's very, very accurate. I've got the paid version. I think the paid version is something like $20 for lifetime. And then you can just plug that into your standard ChatGPT API, and you can start using it. And the nice thing, there's been updates on this are incredibly frequent. $29, incredibly frequent. And one of the things I really like about this is once you actually transcribe it, you'll have ChatGPT integrated into it. So instead of you then having to sort of copy things over into your ChatGPT and then go through all the things there, you can literally just ask it to summarize, or you can ask it to create a transcript, create a outline from it, or whatever you kind of want to do. You can just basically use ChatGPT to handle all that side of things. It was one of the best $30 I've ever spent in my life, and it's one of the tools that I use every single day. You can see if you wanted to transcribe your content into multiple different languages, all be done inside Jer. Incredibly accurate, and everything's done on your Mac. It's not being sent off anywhere else, which is always really, really nice. So that's Mac Whisper. Go and take a look at that. Let me just grab the link for that for you. So Video Boy, hopefully that at least helps. If you want captioning, I mean, CapCut is probably the best way of doing that at the moment, because CapCut is very good when it comes to its AI captioning, and it'll do all of that for you in minutes on long videos. So you could use that, although whether that will actually stay being available if America kind of get their way, because it's linked to TikTok, the same people that created TikTok, so there may be issues with that. Mac Whisper. To be honest, I have no idea, Ground Pets, about a Windows one. It's a shame it's not cross-platform, but it is, unfortunately, it is a Mac version. To be honest, I think if you just literally want to do transcripts and you don't have something like this, I would just use CapCut, because I'm pretty sure, I think you can export those as just sort of like a standard file, which you could then use afterwards. I know you can burn them into your video, but I think you can also do the captions and output the captions. And I have to double check that to see if I'm right or not. But take a look at that. At the moment, it's completely free. It could be quite useful. Anyway, like I say, if you're a Mac user, Mac Whisper is incredibly, incredibly useful. It's also very good if you wanted to use it. For example, you've got a video on YouTube and you want to summarize it. You can literally just drop in the URL to that video, drop it into Mac Whisper, and then it will actually, you can ask it to summarize it for you, and you can get a summary of that video, so you don't have to sit through the entire thing. That can be quite useful. Yeah, so CapCut is probably a useful one. So it does what you've been talking about and drag or drop the video and alter the words on screen or give it a robot voice. No, this literally just transcribes it. It doesn't talk back to you. This isn't that kind of thing. The transcription is just literally, it transcribes it into a different format. Your text formats that you can then use in various different ways. So that's what it's doing there. It's not speaking it back to you. Else, add a part. No experience myself, but read there are several tools for the content for WP Bakery. Shortcodes, you can use those whenever tool to design new templates and display the content. See, Els is always a font of knowledge. She is. Okay. Painstaking hours done for you. Absolutely. If you knew how long it would take me if I sat there, even though I had tools that I can sort of upload to and they would do the transcript, I just found it a bit of a pain, because if you've got like a video that's sometimes you've got like an hour-long video, it takes 20 minutes to upload the thing, then you've got to wait for it to actually go and do the job, and then you've got to download it in various different formats. And if you want it in one format, that's fine. If you want it in two formats, you've got to transcribe it more than once, or it just becomes a bit of a pain in the bum. So I just found that Mac Whisper, for the $29 it cost me, and I think I might have had 20% off at the time, was absolutely brilliant. Spot of Cash. Any plans for more videos on Generate Blocks 1.9 and 1.7? Yes, when they come out of alpha release, because I think they're in alpha 3 at the moment. When they come out and they're finally released, I will definitely be creating some videos on it. At this point, I haven't really seen the need for it. Excuse me. Because Kyle from the admin bar has covered an awful lot of what's available in these earlier releases. But once they're actually finally released, then yes, for sure. But what I'll do is I won't be sort of showing like how this feature works and how that feature works. I think I'll just take it and show you how to build a project. Build like a landing page or a sales page or something, and then how you can use the global classes and things like that inside there to kind of pull the entire design together alongside their new sort of design template starters. Because I think this is where a lot of the power is going to come in. And I think Tom has done a fantastic job of creating and integrating a really solid way of working. Time will tell if there's any gaps in there that need to be bridged, because I haven't actually used it in real earnest yet until it actually is finally released. I've played about it a little bit, so yeah, that will happen. So yeah, for sure. WP Builder Pros, any plan for breakdance tutorials? No, not in the foreseeable future. Two reasons. One, I don't have a license for breakdance anymore. I had the 1 year's free license with it. And two, I think there are other people out there that are covering it and they're doing a great job of covering it. I don't think it needs me to start covering it as well. I think it's already covered by, like, Cracker covers it. There's quite a few different people that are covering it. So for me, I've got no plans to cover breakdance in the foreseeable future. Nicholas, what are your thoughts on Agent WP? I watched the video on it yesterday and it looked interesting. Whether it will be everything they say it will be, we'll have to wait and see, because we do tend to find, if you take a look at their other product, which is, whichever of the AI platform things that they use for WordPress, it's okay, but I think there are other tools that they're doing just as good, if not a better job in some cases. So I've signed up for the early release. Whether that will, pay off and I'll actually get that sooner rather than later, and then I can take a look at whether it's worth covering content. But it does look interesting. I think we'll just have to wait to see how powerful it actually is, and then see we move on from there. But this is the thing, I think, if you are using AI in Code WP, that's it. Thanks, Nicholas. If you're using AI in any kind of way, and you start to use things like, ChatGPT, or using Code WP, or you're using WP Turbo, any of those kinds of tools, they're good, but you still need to understand what it is you're doing. If you don't understand the code that's coming out from it, you can get yourself into all kinds of hot water. I think that will improve, but I do still think that you need to have at least some fundamental understanding of what's being put out to see if there's any vulnerabilities. And you can ask the AI, are there any known vulnerabilities in this? And it will come back and tell you what it thinks. But at the end of the day, I do still think you're then at the mercy of AI, which can get misinformation. It's not 100%, infallible. So for anything that has any kind of security implications, I would be very dubious about whether I would rely on it. So, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It is an interesting concept, though, Nicholas. I definitely say that it is interesting. As for what will they charge for it, I suppose it depends whether it plugs into something like ChatGPT or uses their OpenAI, or whether it's a completely standalone AI. When I say completely standalone, I mean it's part of your subscription model to it. But I think if they start charging, like $30, $40, $50 per month, then I would question whether people would look at that and go, well, but ChatGPT is $20 a month, and what exactly am I getting more out of it just because it's been trained on WordPress? Is it really worth that much more? Again, like I say, though, we'll have to wait and see price-wise. We'll have to wait and see feature-wise. I do just think that AI is something that's just being shoved into everything at the moment, for good or for bad. And I think it will end up becoming a massive crutch for a lot of people that don't really understand what they're trying to do. They might be able to tell it what to do, but if they can't quality check the code afterwards, anything could be done. This is the thing. If the source of information that AI is pulling from has any kind of issue into it, is that going to be passed on to the code that it actually spits out? Well, the chances are, yes, it is. So if you don't understand what's going on, especially when you're dealing with more complex AI-related things that you may want to do, I think that opens up a massive can of worms that I don't really want to be kind of promoting until, we've got better systems in place. So we'll have to see. Phil, another sub I can do without. And I think a lot of people are kind of feeling that. This is the thing. If you're doing this for business purposes, then you can probably justify the money you would spend on it, because every penny, dollar, cent, whatever it is you invest into your business, you have to make a return on that, whether it's a time return, whether it's a productivity return, or whether it's a financial return. Ultimately, all three would be brilliant. Well, you kind of have to ask, how much would you use that to warrant the cost that it would sort of come with it? But again, like I say, we have to wait and see how much it's going to cost. AI is making people lazy and stupid. I would agree it's definitely making people lazy. Stupid, I think that might be a little bit harsh. In some cases, might be justified. But yeah, it's a dangerous place at the moment. It's exciting for a lot of people, but I think it's dangerous in the fact that it could go spectacularly wrong. If you're playing around with your own site, that's your own responsibility, not a problem. But if you're doing it for a paid client on a client site, and then something becomes compromised and it traces back that that's because you used some AI-based code that you didn't understand and you didn't have any way of vetting, and then you put that in there and then it causes all manner of issues, well, that's leaving yourself open to a boatload of pain in the future. Okay, so, Bo, this is an interesting one. And thanks for joining in today. Beyond code automated site building with AI, where do you feel the actual value is for AI and WordPress? I have some strong opinions. Where do I think the actual value is? Let's keep this in the context of web design and maybe running a web design business agency, freelance, whatever it is. One of the key things that I think is incredibly useful for is to repurpose the content that you have already. For example, lots of clients that will come to you, they'll write their own content. They won't go to a copywriter because they don't want to pay the amount of money that a good copywriter will actually charge them, which, again, you have to go back to that return on investment. And I think they will write the content up, which isn't always the best content. I mean, I suck at writing my own content for my websites and stuff like that. So I 100% utilized AI to handle a lot of this side of things. Do I let it just go off willy-nilly and do it? No, of course not. But what I will do is I will use it, I will input what I want to say, and then I will ask it to do something with it, whether to refine it, make it shorter, make it to the point, make it more succinct, change the tone of voice, whatever you want to do with it. And I think that's where, for me personally, a big chunk of value comes from it. The second, and this is probably very specific to me because of what I do, being a content creator with YouTube and stuff, or course creator and that, is taking my content, what I've created, the videos that I've recorded in my own tone of voice and the way that I work and the way I explain things, and then run that through a transcription tool like MacWhisper, like I was talking about earlier on, which will transcribe that, and then using it to summarize the content, to create a summary, to make it a little bit more manageable for people to see exactly what's going on, and then use that as like a description or a starting point for the description. But then also using it to create written versions of the content that I've created in video format, because I used to do all my tutorials written with screen grabs and things, and then create a hybrid approach. Well, this means that I can create content a lot quicker, and then I can use AI to handle that side of things, to give me the sort of like, this is the step-by-step how you do it. Use something like MacWhisper linked into their ChatGPT to do that side of things, and then I will run that through something like Grammarly, which means that I can refine the language so it is less AI sounding. So AI has a very certain tone of voice, I think. Run it through something like Grammarly to create the written content, to refine it, to tweak it, to get it a little bit better, adjust it then for my own tone of voice, make sure that, go through the different steps, that everything works out correctly. Any code snippets that are being used in there to demonstrate something, again, use that to handle checking it, going back and making sure that it all works out correctly, both the CSS, the HTML, and so on. And then use that to actually output the content and create the written tutorial version. Let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. If I use the Learn Bricks Builder site, I've been using it on here an awful lot because it just means that I can create written versions to back up what I'm actually creating in video format. So let me just accept this a second. So if I just switch over. So for example, let's just get rid of that a second. So we go into my latest video. So for example, this dynamic testimonials with ACF and Bricks Builder. So if we go in there, there's my video. So I've just run this then through MacWhisper, done what I need to do inside ChatGPT, and then put that through Grammarly. And you can see underneath then, this is giving the step-by-step exactly how to do it, how to add the custom fields. It organizes it into a logical fashion, tells you exactly what needs to be done, which then reinforces what I've got inside the video. So if we come back out of this one and I take a look at the dark mode, what was incredibly useful for this is I've got the code here. This is my code that I've used to create the custom function. But then I've asked ChatGPT to go and explain what each of those are. So each of those little sections, like what the function is, what a function does, the echo, then breaking down the CSS, just means that I don't have to sit there and do all this and break the code apart and then explain what's going on. So all these little things, I think this is where the strength of AI comes in for me personally, is to be able to combine a couple of different tools to give the end user, anybody that wants to learn this kind of content, this sort of tools, how they can then just have a written version. Some people prefer written versions, some people prefer video versions. And I think the two together give you a beautiful hybrid approach. So for me, and I say I'm only speaking from myself, this is where I found the strength of AI personally for me, is taking what you create and refining it in a multitude of different ways. I think reliance upon it to create code output for more complex use cases. There's nothing wrong with some simple use cases, or if you understand the code, use it as a time-saving tool. I think that's the whole point, is we use it as a tool to save ourselves time. That's what I would suggest anyway. Bo, what would you say there? Let's have a little look. Completely agree. Thanks for your reply. I think the day-to-day operation, in your case, video content, the same value should be used for the WP agent to get more non-critical work done. Yeah, you think how much money you would charge a client to do some very simple things. Like if you said to a client, right, I want you to supply me all the content you want for your website, and then we're going to give it to a copywriter. We've got an in-house copywriter, or we use an external copywriter, and we want them then to take what you've written, refine it, and make it a little bit more on point with what we're trying to do. Well, I think this is where that charge, a lot of people, especially when it comes to smaller businesses working with SMEs and individuals and so on, that's a cost that they wouldn't necessarily want to suck up, because it could run into the thousands, to have for bigger sites. So I think having something like good AI, especially where you've got the chat type of AI, like ChatGPT, where it's conversational, where you can keep that thread going and it retains the relevance and it retains the context of the whole conversation. So you may go back in 3 months' time when your client comes to you and says, I've got some new content, I want to add a new page, where you want to keep that same tone of voice and the same way that the language is put across and the same method of delivery, whether it's sort of like a simplified, non-technical version or whatever. Well, you can go back to that conversation and you can just start adding new things in there, and it will continue to keep that. The same as going to a good copywriter who remembers the client. Does it replace a copywriter, a good copywriter? No. But if you've already got a client that's not going to pay that, let's just say $1,000 to have their entire site done with a copywriter, and you say, well, look, we can run it through AI, and it'll cost you £250, whatever. So it's a quarter of the price, but it's not going to give you a quarter of the quality. It's going to get, let's say, it gives you 75% of the quality. The last 25% is the little polish that a good copywriter can put on. Well, that's still money you wouldn't have made using a tool that does a lot of the work for you. And the client ends up with a nice product at the end of it that is more cohesive, is put across better. There's lots of different use cases. So for me, that is where I think the power of AI is in our industry. I think if you rely upon AI at this point in time to design things for you, and I'm not talking about something like Framer, where they've got their AI to create the wireframes and so on. I think that's quite useful. I'm talking more about your AI generating website tools, whether that's a WordPress orientated one or whether it's a SaaS kind of orientated one. I still think, unless things have changed in the last couple of months since I last took a look at it, I just think that what they're doing is they're using AI to create the content and potentially the images that are used as part of that content. And then they're using a range of predefined templates. And then they're just adding the content in and maybe tweaking the color scheme a little bit and giving you some options to tweak the color scheme. And then you have to go and do the work afterwards yourself. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I think the perception is that it's all done for you and it's all totally unique. And all the tools that I've tried to this point haven't done that. They've all kind of used templates, standard range of templates, maybe 50 templates. So you're going to end up with lots of sites that all look the same, because other than the colors, the images, and the written word, the rest of the design is the same. It's no different to using templates if you go to Wix or you go to Squarespace or one of the sort of options you have as part of WordPress. They can fundamentally end up looking the same because they're all using the same small tool set. The only difference is the words and the pictures that are being used. So Yeah, come on. If you are enjoying the live stream today, you're getting value from this, thumbs up. Let's override that one person to put the thumbs down right back at the beginning because, well, they can just do one. It's not a problem. I don't know what that is. I have no idea. But it seemed good at the time. Anyway, Diana, AI should just be should be just another tool, but no replacement for actual knowledge. I find these days people want to create things, be it sites or art, etc., without putting in the work, and it shows. Yeah, you can literally tell AI artwork a mile away. You know, not everything, because I think if people put the time and the effort into understand how to craft the prompt for AI, you can shape it in a very distinct way. However, as Diana says, a lot of people just want to put in one simple line and then whatever gets spat out is very generic. And I think the same thing goes for when you're using it to create written copy. If you are very much the sort of just putting the bare bones basic in there, you will get bare bones basic spat back out. I think that's why it works so well when you use a tool to create summaries and then using that transcription to create the written version, in my example of the tutorials and things. I think it works so well because it's got such a chunk of content. Everything, all the answers it needs are in that transcript. It doesn't have to go outside and find answers and ask questions and things like that. So I think this is where the strength lies for things like that. The other thing I want to sort of go back to, and Bo, this is kind of going back to your original question. I think our searching is changing. If you look at a tool like Perplexity AI, which I really like Perplexity, see if I can pull that up a second for you. That changes the way, because that's more a search engine that answers your questions. So for example, we used to sort of go into Google and typing in, we want to find something. Whereas with this, let's just say, ask us anything. So we'll say, explain BEM in simple language. Not dimple language, that's a whole different thing. Simple as language. Good God, I can't type today. Right. So that now gives us a different way of getting our information back. So for example, let's go with these bloody things, necessary cookies. So this is more like a search engine that actually gives you an answer as opposed to Google, which just gives you a list of sites to go and check out for yourself. So I think this is another area that I think we're going to definitely change, is the way in which we find information and we get answers is going to be fundamentally different to the way that we're used to, which is just going on to something like Google and just saying, what is BEM? You know, and you'll get a bunch of websites then that'll take you through. So you've got to go and find a good website, which could be pages and pages and pages of information to find out what they're talking about. Whereas with this, it's a lot more succinct. And the nice thing I like about this is it kind of gives you the same ability to have a journey. So you can see that gives us the information about what BEM is. You know, it's the block element modifier using CSS. So we've got that idea there. Well, we might go, okay, that's cool. But what are the benefits of using it in web development? So that's the next logical question I want to ask. So let's go and ask it. So we're now going through a journey, getting information that's structured in a much more logical fashion that gives us what we want, and images and things like that. So you can see now this gives us the benefits of it. So you might say, well, what are the disadvantages? So imagine you're working on a tutorial, you're working on some content, and you want to have these answers, and you want to reword it. You don't just say it, verbatim. Well, this now allows you to go and read through it. The thing I really like about this is any of the sources, you can see we've got these little numbers. There's the source. This is where it comes from. So we can easily find out, where was that answer pulled from? Do we think it's a viable source? If it is, we could use it. We could reference it. You know, whatever we want. We can ask this to rewrite it. We can copy it. We can do all the kind of things we want. I think this is the way that we're going to change the way in which we search. And I think this is to me, this is probably one of the more exciting aspects of where AI is going. You know, we all use it to go, okay, I want it to write me this, I want it to write me that, and create this picture and do all these kinds of things. I think that's cool. That's interesting. But I think this is where a lot more of the value comes in, because this is Reddit as a source. I agree, Phil. That's why I said you want to check out the sources yourself. But I think this is what makes it interesting. As this starts to grow, I think this is where search is going to go in the next couple of years. I think this is what we're going to get, which is more rich return of information. that's going to have a negative impact on a lot of sites, because instead of listing the sites, bye Rich, you've got to go, take care, man. If you go to sort of like, you go to the sites, you've got to list them and everything like that, it's like that's all well and good, but I think this is much better. Like I say, it's going to have a knock-on effect, because those sites which should be listed and ranked inside, let's say Google being the main search engine, then obviously they're going to be played down, because it's going to be more about the information. So you're still going to have the ability to create the information, but I think the information that we'll find is going to be structured more like this. This is where I would say that aspect of AI is going to come in and start to be more useful. Yeah, let's go Wikipedia. But the difference is, I suppose, with Wikipedia, that is fundamentally, people just putting what they kind of want in there. Whereas with something like this, I would assume that we will get to the point where we'll aggregate, cross-reference that information and use that as a basis for validating the information. But this is no different to what we see on a website. If you go to a website, just because someone says something is true on a website doesn't mean to say it is true. So you still have to do your research. You still have to go and take a look at a couple of sites with the same information to glean what appears to be the correct information. So you have to validate it. I think this is probably going to do a certain amount of that validation for you, where it goes and says, right, I'm going to look at this 50 sites out there now that are all talking about, in this example, the benefits and the negatives of using BEM. Well, now you can say, well, if 47 of those all come back with these are the main benefits, it's a pretty safe bet that that's the main benefits. And then the 3 that didn't come back with the same benefits, well, maybe there's a little bit more cross-reference that has to go on there. I don't have the answers to it. I just think this is probably the way that we're going to see searching and finding information online. This is more the way it's going to go than what we currently have now, which is just listing things out via Google. Your typical sort of, if we go to Google, for example, and we just typed in reject all, just typed in what is BEM. Now what we get is we've got to go and figure it out ourselves. We've got people ask, so you've got roughly the same kind of thing there. But now we don't get the answers immediately. We've now got to go through and troll. I'll put the screen up, wouldn't I? We've now got to go through and troll through these to find out what information is out there. Cheers, Mark. Take care, buddy. Hope you're all doing well anyway. And then we have to kind of go through and they go, oh, that looks interesting. Then we've got to go to the site and say, okay, now we've got to find that bit and we've got to go and read this. It just, to me, that's less intuitive than using something like Perplexity AI, that type of model with where it's kind of going to collate that information, aggregate it, and also show you the references that it's used. I think that's where the cool thing is. Right. Hopefully that answered the question about AI. Where do I think AI is going to go? Okay, so any questions for me? Remember, hashtag Q for question makes it a little easier for me to be able to find. So I'm going to have a little quick look to see if you've got questions in there. Okay. Stefan, what are your thoughts about building sites using Greenshift? I haven't seen any Greenshift tutorials on your channel, but so far have found it very useful when combined with a Bloxy theme. I haven't really tried it in earnest. I tried it a long time ago when I sort of first became aware of it, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the editing experience. Nothing to do with the functionality underneath it, just the editing experience. However, the developer reached out to me when someone asked me if I was going to cover it in a thread on Facebook recently, and they said any content creators, we give you a free pro license so you can just try it out, and if you want to create content, and by all means do. So at some point, I will be going and taking a look at it in a little bit more detail, because I think it's starting to mature. A lot of people are recommending it, especially now that Quickly's kind of left the building. I think there's been a gap in the market for something more powerful that works with core WordPress, which is what Greenshift and previously Quickly did. So I will go back and take a look at it. It's not on my radar for right now, but I think there's nothing wrong with building sites with it, because it is getting a lot of very, very favorable feedback, but I can't give an opinion on it. I haven't actually tried it with earnest myself, but at some point I will go and take a look at it. More probably from a first look for building something, but also from a dynamic point of view, because having access to this sort of premium version, I'll now have access to the dynamic functionality. And that's kind of more where my channel lies, and more where my interest lies is the dynamic side of things. But I will be taking a look at Greenshift, because this year I will be covering a lot more when it comes to dynamic content, different tools for building, using dynamic data, and also different tools for creating dynamic data through, whether it's ACPT, all those kinds of tools. So I will be looking at more. But Greenshift is on the market for one of those areas that I will be taking a look at. Esther, I'm considering moving into Bricks from Elementor. Is there anything that Elementor can do better than Bricks? Market. They can market very, very well. No. Do I think there's anything they can do better than Bricks? Better than Bricks. Not really, because I think the learning curve is probably a little shallower when it comes to Elementor. But if you're already an Elementor user and you're using containers, you're already working with Flexbox, and if you've dabbled with something like CSS Grid, which again is also supported by Elementor, then I think transitioning over to something like Bricks should be relatively, easy. There is a learning curve. There's no two ways about it, because Elementor and tools like that have a little bit more hand-holding, which means it's a little bit more accessible for newer users. And I think when you become comfortable with that and you become accustomed to that, moving over to something that doesn't necessarily hold your hand for everything then seems like a big learning curve, a big jump. It's like this is a complete different way of approaching things. But I think once you get past that, and it shouldn't take you long to get past it, and then you start to see about using things like, what's it called? Global styling, those kinds of things, working with CSS frameworks, tools like Advanced Thema, which makes working with Bricks even more powerful, the visual CSS grid builder that has in it, and so many different tools, then I think you probably very quickly look back. I know from my own journey where I've used Elementor for like six plus years. Moving over to Bricks, there was a learning curve there, like I've said. But when you go back now, when you kind of become accustomed to that workflow and you go back, it's very difficult to go back to that way of building sites where you lose out on things like global styling, global classes, and so on. A lot of the things to just make building sites and maintaining sites and updating sites, where you want to make sweeping changes, becomes so much quicker and easier. It's much more intuitive way of working once you go past that little bit of a learning curve. So do I think that Elementor does anything better than Bricks? Personally, no, I don't. I think there's things that if you work with dynamic data like repeater regions and sort of flexible content fields like with ACF and stuff like that, you don't have to have a third-party plugin to be able to do that. You can do it all natively inside Bricks Builder, whereas with Elementor, you do need to have third-party plugins, so you have a learning curve understanding how they work, and also that issue of when you update, you've got dependencies. Elementor has dependencies on those plugins, and those plugins have dependencies on Elementor. If they're not talking to each other, they're not updating at the same time, it all becomes potential then for issues. And this is where a lot of times you see people going in and moaning about Elementor making an update and their site's broken. A lot of times it's because that link between the third-party plugins or the themes and Elementor, not everybody's talking to each other, not everybody's been updated, and that's where problems lie. Well, when you take out that dependency on those third-party tools, there's less potential. There's never a case of there's never going to be bugs, because it's impossible. But there's less potential for things to break because it is all part of the core software. So simple answer is no, I don't think there's anything that Elementor does better than Bricks personally. But then my use case is different to other people's, where they might go, well, Bricks is just better at this and Elementor is better at that. But I say, if you're already looking at it, I would say invest the time, learn it, see how you can streamline your whole design process with it. And I think you'll look back then and go, the time and effort you invested in learning Bricks to make that transition will pay dividends, because you become more effective in what you're trying to do. If you're doing this working with clients, you'll be quicker getting projects out the door, because you can get your starter sites all set up, your blueprint sites, with all these things set up and your basic core sort of design system in place, and then you make it a few tweaks and you can be up and running very, very quickly. There's lots of benefits. I think personally, I think it's worth taking the time to learn it. Exposure concepts. You have some cool tutorials on dynamic data. Any chance of doing a query builder tutorial with Bricks that filters a page on a taxonomy and sorts the ACF rows on the page with multiple fields? I will be taking a look. I don't know specifically that. I will be taking a look at digging deeper into more topics when it comes to working with, in this example, ACF and Bricks. But it might not always be ACF, but it probably will be Bricks or Generate Blocks. And we will be taking a look at some more advanced setups for sure. Whether it be that specifically, I'd have to take a little look, but I'll never rule things out. You know, you never know. I try to sort of take on board what people are looking for, any sort of pain points that people have, and then try to create content around it. So you never know. Hey, look, here comes trouble. How are you doing, Matt? Thank you very much for your super chat. You are an absolute gentleman. No matter what they say about you, I'm just joking. Just joking. But go and check out Matt on the WP Minute. Great podcast if you want to check that out. All to do with WordPress, keeping a sort of fingers on the pulse of what's going on. Go and check out the WP Minute. I can't even speak. Go and check out the WP Minute and Matt doing a fantastic job. And thank you for the super chat. Okay, I'm going to wind things down. We've got 5 more minutes. Templates are handled better by Elementor than bricks. Templates is definitely a weak area when it comes to bricks. I will give you that one, Nicholas. It is definitely a weak area. And I think template management, I don't think is bad. I think the way that it works there, I think Elementor has a more visual way of handling those things. But templates is definitely an area that they need to work on in various different ways when it comes to bricks. So I will give you that partially. Just partially. Okay. What else do we have? Moving today, thanks so much. No problem at all, Esther. Yeah, Nicholas, Bricks has a lot more flexibility to dynamic content. Elementor is kind of more polished in terms of UI. I've got to be honest there, Nicholas, I would 100% have to disagree with you there. I think Elementor does not have the better UI. I will be brutally honest about it. I don't think it does. But we can agree to disagree. Okay. When we have Artif, it's a fair point that once you start using bricks and get used to it, many frustrations with Elementor will arise, especially basic things like moving elements around or in and out. Each still have, yeah, they're on use cases. You know, this is kind of my point. I know people go like that. I'm the Elementor hater and I'm the anti-fan and all those kinds of things, but I could easily take on that role and just slag Elementor off for the sake of it, just to get clicks, views, and sort of, you know, opposing opinions. But I don't think there's a need for it. I think Elementor does a very, very good job. And I think if Elementor hadn't been created, we wouldn't be seeing a lot of the features and a lot of the builders we see now doing what they're doing. Can they say that they took a lot of the inspiration from Elementor? Obviously. But Elementor took its inspiration from builders before it, like Divi, like Visual Composer, looked at the pain points, looked at what people didn't like, and then innovated on top of that, took the bits that were good and kept those because it made sense, took the bits that were bad and refined them, improved them, or whatever. And I think this is the natural progression of any tool. None of this, not a single thing that we are seeing is unique. It's all been taken from somewhere. You know, when you take a look at things like global classes and using frameworks. Frameworks have been around for years. It's only now we're starting to see them being integrated into builders because builders are becoming much more powerful, and then integrating something like a framework into it makes it even more powerful, but also helps bring in those people that are used to working with frameworks into the fold, because then they can develop sites quicker using a lot of the sort of techniques that they're used to. I think this is where, you know, love it or hate it, where Quickly brought Tailwind in. You probably had a lot of Tailwind users would like to have had a visual way of building, and something like Quickly might have been that gap, bridging that gap between, you know, some of the more boring, laborious things they'd have to do manually using something like Tailwind with a builder like Quickly. So it's a shame that we never got to see what that could become. You know, whether you agree or disagree whether Tailwind was the right thing or not, I have no idea. But at the end of the day, you know, these are things that kind of bridge the gap. And it would have been interesting to see where that had gone. Good afternoon, Kevin. Good to see you in. Thank you very much. And thank you for your super chat. You're an absolute gentleman. You're right. 100% right. The Elementor doesn't have a better UI than Bricks. And Bricks is so far superior. No, there it is. It's not even worth debating. Good to see you streaming a lot. Cheers. Well, we'll say no more. But I don't agree that Elementor has a better interface. If I'm honest, going back to it after using Bricks for so long, going back to it kind of felt like the interface kind of just felt really alien, didn't feel particularly intuitive, and didn't feel particularly quick to work with. And this was one of the things one of the criticisms I had about Quickly. It was very interesting and a very powerful tool. But I think the icon first way that they had the interface set up made things more complicated to find what you want to do. Sure, once you become used to it, any tools are the same. It's like when you drive a car, when you learn to drive, you think I've got to change gear, I've got to use brakes, indicators, unless you're a BMW driver like me, or you don't need to indicate, because that's not my problem. I'm just joking. But once you get past that, yeah, sure, you stop thinking about it and it becomes okay, that's cool. You just do it all and think nothing of it and just look where you're going. So I think, you do have to bear in mind that, yeah, interfaces can be very subjective. But personally, I like the Bricks interface. I like the way it's been set up. And I like the fact that it's not icon first driven in a lot of use cases. It just makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. Anyway, okay, so we're going to have a couple more minutes and then I'm going to call it a day. Okay. We have Aiden. Some Elementor does do better. It provides you a quicker start, smaller learning curve, and gets you out the door quicker. Later down the line, we pay the price we see the shortfalls, my 2 pence. I would say yes and no. Yes, as in you are right. If you take a vanilla install of Elementor and a vanilla install of WordPress, of Bricks, absolutely. You can probably be up and running super quick by using Elementor. But I think if you are smart in the way that you work, you'll create your own blueprint site. And this can be the same for Elementor, Bricks, GeneratePress, whatever you want. Once you've got that, I think then you are in a position where you can be up and running and be more productive quicker with Bricks, a framework. And if you want to use something like, like Frames, for example, or you want to use things like Brixies or any of those kinds of tools to get your sort of site up and running super quickly, then I think you are much more effective and much quicker working, but you just put the time at the beginning. And I think everybody needs to sort of spend the time doing that. If you do this for a living, you need to have a blueprint site set up that you can launch. And you might have multiple blueprint sites. You might have one that's set up and configured specifically for working with, WooCommerce. Another one you may have set up working with, creating another kind of site. And you may have a simpler, streamlined one where you want to use GeneratePress and GenerateBlocks, whatever you want to use. It's up to you. But these are the things that allow you to spend a bit of time now, but you will pay dividends. As soon as you want to launch a site, you can literally have everything in place with your templates, with your standard page layouts, your blog page layouts, your headers, your footers. Stick multiple designs in if you want to, and just strip out the ones you don't want. There's a ton of ways in which you speed up the whole process. I think that's where the working smarter, not harder, comes into play. So your blueprint site is absolutely much required. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up now. I'm going to just go through and just wind things down a little bit. Sorry, Marcel, you missed pretty much the entire live stream, so you're going to have to go and watch it on catch up now, and then you can leave any comments you want in the comment section as opposed to making them live. So I do apologize, but you missed a good one. And I even advertised this one this week. I even said I'm going to be doing a live stream on Thursday, and I stuck to it. And I will probably do one next Thursday as well. Maybe. Anyway. Okay. Robert, if you had to build a site with Elementor, now that you're proficient with Bricks, are there anything you would do differently? Influences from Bricks methods? Oh, that's a good question. Is there anything I'd do differently? I would definitely set up a starter site, but the benefits are not as big when it comes to, I upset someone with Elementor. Yeah, I think the benefits are not as big as when you work with something like Bricks, because you can't use a CSS framework inside Elementor. So I think I would probably set up my basic template setup and have a blueprint site put in place for that. But other than that, no, I don't think there is. Because like I say, when I go back to Elementor, I kind of feel a little bit sort of like I've got one arm tied behind my back, because of the way that I work now. It just makes so much more sense when you're working with the global styles, when you're working with CSS classes, and when you're working with the CSS framework and those kinds of things. When you go back to anything that doesn't have that, like you have got legacy sites for clients, that were built on Elementor, it's like when you go for, the only way I can sort of describe it, not such a big gap, but like if you've ever sort of like have a site that you built with WP Bakery or Visual Composer, the original versions of that. And then you moved over to Elementor. Then you went back to the sites you had clients on. And you go, oh my God, I forgot it was built on this. Then you realize this sucks. It's not as big a gap as that, but it's kind of that same kind of feeling. You kind of go back and think, oh, now I want to do this. It should be really simple, and I can't. I've got to go and do it in this way, which is longer-winded. So, but apart from that, I can't say there's a specific thing that I would do differently. Predictable UI with listed text is a major reason I stuck with bricks over quickly. Breakdance UIs for, okay. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I found quickly difficult to kind of get to grips with to start off with, because they were very icon first. And that's okay, like I say, when you get used to it, when you become comfortable with it. But to start off with, I think that was quite a big barrier for a lot of people when you're used to working with tools like, bricks with generate press, generate blocks, any of those kinds of tools. I think that was a bit of a. I know I criticized the UI right back at the beginning when they were on AppSumo when I bought them first of all. And fair play, Louis did go and make some changes, but I still think that maybe there was still room for improvement with regards to you go an icon first. Just kind of felt more cumbersome and increased the learning curve that's already quite steep for a lot of users because of, how advanced Quickly was in comparison to most of the other tools out there that were working with core WordPress. Right. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining in. If you've enjoyed the stream, give it a thumbs up if you find it useful. Thanks to everybody that's joined in and become part of it. Thanks to Kevin for becoming part of it. Thanks to Mark for being involved in you. Thanks to Brendan as well for popping in, who has another YouTube channel. So go and check out Brendan O'Connell's YouTube channel, who does a lot of good things on WordPress as well. So go and check out Brendan's channel. And again, like I say, lots of great channels out there, lots of different ways of learning WordPress and all the kinds of things go with it. Share the love, get involved, subscribe to those channels, and just help everybody become so much better at WordPress. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to join in today. I'll see you, all being well, the same time next week, same time next Thursday. So you are forewarned that there will be another live stream, and I will even put it up on there so you can bookmark it if you want to. But thanks again for joining in. Hope you've enjoyed the live stream. I will see you again next week. Don't forget, I've got plenty of videos coming out over the next couple of days. Have a fantastic weekend when that comes around, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.